Good morning. I believe we're still waiting for more fellows and guests. Nonetheless, we will begin our session a little bit late, but still as interesting as we had planned. I'm happy to welcome the governor of the Astana International Financial Center, Mr. Renat Bekturov. He's our speaker for this morning's session. We will speak about the new developments of the Astana Financial Center and all the opportunities and value proposition that it has to offer for the region and all the businesses present here. Welcome.
Thank you, Gaukhar.
Before we proceed to our interview, I would like to give a short brief on the biography of Mr. Renat Bekturov. He is ex-director of the Astana International Exchange, the CEO of the Astana International Exchange, previously held position at the head of the Asset Management Development Department at the AFC Authority. He has over 16 years of experience in the financial industry. Prior to the AFC Authority, he was the treasury at the National Investment Corporation at the National Bank of Kazakhstan. And remarkably, I believe this is very important, he was involved in a landmark debt transactions, especially the first Islamic finance bond issue, which is Sukuk in the CIS. If I may, we will continue to the questions.
Sure.
Since the beginning of the AIFC, you've been part of it for a while. What is the key value proposition that the AFC has for the region?
Well, thank you, Gaukhar. And first of all, I would like to, again, say good morning to everyone present in the room. It's a pleasure to be here. And of course, I thank the organizers of this event for invitation. For me, it's an opportunity to speak to very wide group of people, talented people involved in many areas, especially in the region of Central Asia, Caucasus, Mongolia, Afghanistan, because that is exactly the region that we were thinking about when creating Astana Financial Center. And again, Gaukhar, thanks for a brief bio. So yeah, I've been involved with finance for some time, but with what I am with the financial center for now 8 years almost. So from the establishment from 2016. Maybe before I go to the value proposition, I give a brief explanation of what is the AFC, because I've met few people and not everyone, I guess, aware, and of course not everyone is in finance. So Astana Financial Center is actually a separate jurisdiction that is created in Kazakhstan in the city of Astana. For some people, those all of you who know Dubai International Financial Center or Abu Dhabi Global Markets, it may be more familiar, more clear, because they have a similar setup. So the idea of all these financial centers being created is actually that we have all in the Middle East and Kazakhstan here thought about what actually do we need to have to make sure that the investments come here and we have a proper, liquid, vibrant capital market, so business, entrepreneurs, ideas can get money or capital, ideas, etc., to grow and to make sure that they contribute to the economy of the country and the region. And one of the key success factors of the global financial centers like New York and London, we found out, is kind of based, because it's based on the English common law, which is more flexible. It's about actually the rule of law. It's about obeying to the contract and etc. So kind of some jurisdictions, countries started copying it. One other example is, I guess, Hong Kong, which naturally, historically evolved to be an English common law jurisdiction close to China, and after 97, which is like going back to China. So they're coming from a different historical route, right? In our case, in AFC and for Middle East, it was coming in a different way. So we actually manufacturing it. We saw it's working, so we saw that the investors want that, and it's actually conducive for doing business. So we started thinking of how do we install it locally. And for us, journey has started as a country back in 2014. All of you again remember the global financial crisis of 2008 and 9, then the debt crisis of Europe in 2014. Before that, in early 2000s, Kazakhstan had quite a sophisticated banking system, and mainly economy was driven by financing from the banks. But after the GFC, global financial crisis, the sector got hit pretty badly, right? And it's still, I guess, having these aftershocks even more than 10 years have passed. So again, we thought about like, how do we make sure there is another system or an engine to fuel the economy, to make sure that capital flows freely. We started looking around, we looked at Singapore, Hong Kong, and then Middle East, and we thought, oh, wow, this is something we could do. So we started again in 2014 with the consultants, and in 2015, we as a country have approved the separate constitutional statute on creating AFC. And to make sure that this jurisdiction happens, we had to even amend the constitution that they can be a separate jurisdiction in the city of Astana, which is based on English common law practices for a business. So again, what is the value proposition? It's very broad, right? It's a whole jurisdiction. So mainly the jurisdiction is the value proposition because it gives the flexibility. But behind that, to protect the jurisdiction and to protect the trust that you want to have of the investors, we have our own court and our own international arbitration center. And the court is truly, I can say, independent of the local courts. We have 10 judges. All of them now are UK citizens. It was established by the one of former chief justices of the actually English Royal Court, Lord Wolf, who have helped us to establish it. An arbitration center, we have 41 actually arbiters from different jurisdictions who can practice arbitration. But I think what is important is the track history we have built. So it's not just something we created on a paper. We have now over, our court and arbitration center has processed over 2,000 cases, and which is more important, have enforced actually 100% of them. What is the value proposition? Again, it's a flexibility that helps you to create the different structures, or actually helps investors to come and structure the investments in the way they want. So for example, coming to many of our countries in Central Asia, I guess, especially Kazakhstan, you can set up few legal structures that basically limited liability partnership, joint stock company, fund, that may be the few. But in AFC, there are over 15 different types of entities you can create, like fund structures, LP, GP structures, I mean, finance people will know, special purpose companies, and etc. So again, and its employment regulation, for example, is different. It's more, I guess, comfortable for actually an business and an employer, right? And that's only a few examples of the flexibility. Then again, it's about the capital markets. So we're helping actually really business to establish, to create new industries. For example, an example I gave yesterday was about for one of the groups is crowdfunding. That was a non-existent industry in Kazakhstan. Now it's small, but it's growing. So there are 4 businesses that operate as a crowdfunding and help SMEs to raise funding. Over 235 projects were financed through crowdfunding in AFC, with the average ticket size is $100 US, which is again probably small, but that's the demand, a spot that is mostly overlooked by the small and medium enterprises. So the value proposition is very broad.
I mean, that's fascinating.
That's a long
already.
answer.
Thank you. That's very fascinating with the crowdfunding. This is something new for me. I haven't learned about that before. You've joined as a governor recently, and would you please share? I mean, you mentioned the crowdfunding. Would you please share more successful cases that you see business, which I think are the most brightest, or something relevant for the businesses present here, and more importantly, what is your vision for further development of the AFC?
Thank you. Yes, I was appointed a little bit more than 5 months ago, in January, as the governor. But as you said before, I have been involved or leading in creating the Astana International Exchange, that's the exchange that operates in AFC. So, and as I said, I've been there for more than 7 years. And there are a lot of success stories. For example, an exchange I have started. So we have decided to build from scratch an exchange that again is built to an international standards, both in terms of a regulation and in terms of infrastructure. we were able to attract to this project shareholders such as Nasdaq and then Shanghai Stock Exchange, which is again like two of top 5 probably largest exchanges in the world. So our technology is based on the Nasdaq technology that is used in, I think, over 80 markets in 50 different countries. And we have started operating from IPO of Kazatomprom in 2018. That is the largest uranium company, as many of you know, based in Kazakhstan, which was dual listed with London and with AEX, and they were able to raise $450 million US, about 70 million in Astana from institutionals and retail. And only about 3,000 Kazakhs actually retail have participated. The last offering that happened, public offering on AEX, was in December. That's Kazmunaygas, the oil company, largest state-owned entity in Kazakhstan, did local only IPO, and they were able to raise $330 million US from local market only. And that's the biggest deal in the local market, public market so far. So I guess that is a success story. But also over 70,000 Kazakhs have retail participated in this IPO. That's like from comparing to 4 years ago, that's a jump of more than 20 times, right, in terms of a real retail participation. That's partially because of us, of course, but of course of the digitalization. So a lot of the brokers have started developing their apps so people can participate. Again, that's another angle. We promote innovation. I believe that innovation is in AFC's DNA. So we actually were able to create for our region, a vibrant venture capital market. So a lot of the transactions these days for VC actually get structured in AFC. Again, I gave examples, right? You can have SPCs, etc., etc. But also you can structure a deal in the proper way that a lot of the venture capitalists would like to. You can have different share classes, different convertible bonds, and etc., etc. So there is a flexibility that is needed for the industry. So a lot of the funds are getting set up in AFC. And it's cheaper. Otherwise, you'll have to go and do it in Singapore, in Dubai, London, or somewhere else, which is more expensive, right? So here it's cheaper. I can't recall the whole number, but it's also AFC is really becoming regional. So one of the funds established with the cooperation of our initiative of our digital ministry was the Tumar Fund, which is managed by White Hill. I'm not sure if Aslan is here. They have committed. They were established last year with the $50 million US size and have committed recently to 2 projects, one in Kazakhstan and second one in Tajikistan. But the Tajikistan business is also incorporated in AFC because of the, again, flexibility and the opportunities we provide. So that's a regional story, a success story, I guess. And that's only a few regional stories because there is Uzbek, Kyrgyz businesses that are also starting to use AFC as the jurisdiction for raising capital. There are almost over 1,900 companies now registered in AFC, 1,900 plus in different industries. That is, I guess, also a success story. But what is really important is that is the momentum now. So I've mentioned over 2,000 cases and over 1,900 transactions. That actually more than 50% of that came in last year, meaning second half of 2022 and first half of 2023. Yeah, so we actually really getting to see the momentum and the growth.
It is an encouraging advancement that we hear today. Thank you so much for sharing. Today, I think it's also important that we discuss the new developments in the financial sector, global financial sector. One would be cryptocurrencies, where Kazakhstan holds the second place. As you know, it's been subject to numerous litigation cases, subject to, in some instances, bad publicity. And second, climate finance, and that's another issue. But first, let us proceed to the cryptocurrencies and the regulation, legal framework that AFC offers for the crypto trading and in the Bitcoin mining and so forth.
Thank you, Gaukhar. Yeah, exactly. Crypto or other ways, digital assets are this new, I guess, not anymore new, but a big trend, right, in the financial industry in general globally. Of course, we couldn't stay outside of it. And as I was saying, we also focus on innovation. And if innovation is something that is in our DNA, we were the jurisdiction who were started looking at it. But this is a new emerging market, right? And then we have to differentiate. So the digital assets are two types, right? One are unbacked. Basically, there is nothing behind it except for a code. That's what pretty much a cryptocurrency is, right? It's a code. But there are also backed digital assets. That is tokens, right? Pretty much. So you can have a proper business, but instead of issuing traditional stocks, you would go and do a token, which is a digital asset that allows you to do a lot of the transactions frictionless. So you don't need the whole like infrastructure in terms of a settlement and etc. It can be transacted fast. So this is a promising industry. In terms of really what's happening is, of course, we're looking at, you said Kazakhstan became the top second, third mining jurisdiction, that but has flipped, right? Because that was happening because of the cheap energy, coal-based energy, but that also caused a threat to the energy security of the country. So government started regulating it more actively, imposing taxes and different pricing for the energy because, again, miners were making money, but that not being captured properly. So I guess we're not anymore in top now in terms of a mining, but I guess that's not the point, right? Still, they are licensed, so it's became a licensed activity. And recently, this year, Parliament has passed the law on virtual assets. That law is very new, so we're still developing the whole regulation around it. But that actually regulation says that the AFC jurisdiction is the jurisdiction where transactions, hence exchanges, can operate. We have around 6 exchanges, licensed crypto exchanges in AFC. And 3 of them are participating in this pilot program that we're doing jointly with Central Bank, with the Ministry of Digitalization and the Agency for Regulating the Financial Markets. We have recently extended, it was for 1 year, we extended recently so we can learn about it more, but because main part of the exchange is that you can actually convert it into a traditional money, so you can pay and etc. I think during the pilot project, they made over 7,000 different transactions, but it's capped. So per person, you cannot do more than $1,000 equivalent of transaction. Again, it's a pilot. So we're learning from it, but we, of course, want to be in line with the global regulation. So you heard about all the cases that are happening in the US, of course, and IOSCO, International Organization for Security regulators, of course, is the leader in that jurisdiction. So our regulator, Astana Financial Service Authority, on the same page. We don't want to become the jurisdiction to avoid and to become the gray jurisdiction. But in terms of backed digital assets, we think this is the proper segment that could actually help to make financial transactions frictionless, therefore lowering the costs. I guess that's a very long answer, but that's in terms of sustainable, again, developing the sustainable financing was again in the very beginning in our strategy. So we have a special arm called Green Finance Center. Just to be brief, we helped the country to adopt its taxonomy for green projects. It was adopted in 2021. The first green bonds were listed on Astana International Exchange. It's a small amount, but for the Damu Fund, it's a local SME support agency. Since then, we have also widened the scope, not just green, but ESG. We had also first social bonds issued in AAX, but recently on our other exchange, CASE, was the first gender bonds issued. A few of our banks have initiated programs for the green loans, gender loans, and etc. Our Green Finance Center also was consulting the Kyrgyz government in terms of building their taxonomy of green projects. And the next focus is to build a proper emission trading system so that we can connect to a global emission trading system. It's actually very, I think, important when Europe is thinking about introducing CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanisms. because we truly believe that if we don't invest into these markets, we will have to bear the expense in the future. And you probably heard about the rough estimates how much it can cost to our economies. Yeah, again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is right on point. In the beginning of June, there was a remarkable speech by the National Security Advisor Sullivan on the U.S. commitment to the sustainability development and moreover to the climate finance, including carbon trading, especially in the light of increased exports of energy resource carbons to the European market. Obviously, our exporters will incur additional taxes. So what you're proposing, the climate finance for offsetting mechanism, I think this is quite timely and very important. And most of the countries in our region are exporters of mineral resources, and it is indeed something that must be studied and looked over and considered for opportunity development. And
at the same time, we have to approach it careful and stage way, right? So on the market in Europe, ton of, the carbon credits cost you 100 euros. Here, pretty much there is no market, but it's priced around $1.2, right? The difference is huge. You cannot straight away go to the market price. You'll kill the industry here, right? The whole, as you were saying, in the region, industry is based, and our competitive edge as the economies are cheap energy source, especially for Kazakhstan, right? So we have to be very careful. At the same time, we have a commitment for carbon neutrality by 2060. So if you think about the business, you have to propose some alternatives where they can generate cash flows that will actually offset their cost for implementing the ESG standards. Again, I think the carbon market could be that stimulates them to do more green projects, right? The projects that they can actually gain credits and then trade it on the open market. But again, this is not gonna happen in a moment, right? You have to build the whole system and make sure that the adjustment does not come as a shock.
So as we say in finance, you're right on the rise, in the correct path. I mean, with the cryptocurrency, despite all the setbacks with the FTX case, with the finance case, nonetheless, with the development, which will further dive into the metaverse, digital assets, indeed, I believe in digital assets. It will take time for them to be exchanged for the real goods and services. Nonetheless, I believe we are on track into the metaverse and finance, which can be applied there. Speaking of awareness and knowledge, AFC has been always, since its inception, a case for the best practices for capacity building, for training. Could you please share how do you contribute to the capacity building in the region, in Kazakhstan in particular as well?
Thank you. Again, another arm we have is called Bureau for Continuous Professional Development. It started as an AFC academy, actually. Because again, building a new system requires new knowledge, new skill set, right? So we thought that, again, another asset that we have in country and region are people, right? So it's human resources. And just we were discussing with someone that we have this group of people who went through the Bolashak Scholarship, which I think was one of the greatest initiatives in the country to pay actually for the education of young generations. But we believe in lifelong learning, right? So you have to always sharpen your skills, your knowledge to stay relevant to the market, especially in the financial industry. As you were saying, there is like a crypto happening, digital assets, and et cetera, a lot of new developments. So we started from training courses for the certifications as like chartered financial analysts, ACCA in risk management, and et cetera. And around 18,000 people have went through different courses through our Bureau for Continuous Professional Development. But we're rebranding it. Now it's called A-Pro, basically, which means AFC Professionals. So I believe we have established a proper market for providers of training. So we don't need to be in the market and compete with the market anymore. Independent providers are doing it and doing it quite well, but we kind of help to create a critical mass of trainers who can do that, who have themselves went through the training programs. I myself was the lecturer for CFA courses for different areas of it back in 2018. So now we are focusing more into a B2B segment, right? So I think we still have to build a capacity in terms of corporates in managing finance for the CFOs of different organizations, so they can learn what kind of tools AFC has, what kind of tools we can offer, structuring opportunities, and etc. Right? This is the whole skill set that the proper CFO has to have to be able to finance projects that are profitable for the business. But also, and we've been doing it, is an AFC Law Academy, again, because of the legislation that is, it's not an English law jurisdiction, it's a AFC jurisdiction based on the principles of common law, right? So we are training lawyers, young lawyers, established lawyers on AFC regulations, AFC rules, and then how sittings, hearings in the court happen. Again, this is a procedure that not everyone may be familiar with. So that's an area we also focus. But and third thing we want to do is like a mini MBA program. So instead of doing one certain skill like a CFA or a CCA, rather provide a wider range of different skills that are critical for the management. We ourselves have experienced, and I think many businesses did, the lack of I guess talent in mid-management, right? So you can have like top managers, and then you have very talented people who can execute, but mid-management is the problem. So that's kind of, I think, where we can add value. Basically, in many of these things, we don't want to, again, compete with the market. We want to create the market to make sure it actually thrives, I mean, the market. But we view as a role as enablers, as an icebreaker. So we start, if it's interesting for the market, we're ready to leave the market.
Got it. That's quite interesting. I mean, from my background in academia and business education, I mean, what you're offering, especially the short course mini MBA in the fast-paced environment, indeed much in demand. Before I proceed to my last question, which is quite practical, I would like to open the floor to the Q&A session. I believe our fellows here have wonderful questions. Yes, please.
You said last question, or are we moving to? Okay.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Governor, for the great presentation. I'm also kind of from the same field. I used to work on IPO listing in states and also a CCA member, so very familiar with what great job you have done over the past years. Early this year, I was in this wonderful city, and we had a conference right in this hall about the real estate. And for me, it was a bit surprising that refinancing rates and specifically the mortgage rates are at such a high level right now. And which is actually kind of slows down the refinancing of real estate development and acquisition within the Kazakhstan. So what do you think? I know it's more question to the national bank typically, but maybe you as a professional, what's your opinion about this?
Well, yeah, exactly. Probably to the central bank, but it's about the interest rate policy, right? So I mean, a lot of the central banks these days are aggressive battling inflation, right? So we have seen 10 consecutive interest rate being raised by Fed, right? And our central bank, despite the criticism from the market for keeping interest rates high, I think, were able to manage to control the inflation, and that's the idea. That's their mandate, right? That's the task. There are other examples in globally where central banks actually were lowering the interest rate to make sure that the economic activity keeps up to the level. For some, it played well, for some not. So I guess it always depends on the local context. And I think that basic rate that is set by the central banks drives the rates for other products, including mortgage, right? And yeah, housing market has slowed down. Same in Kazakhstan for the secondary markets and for the primary markets. It is just a market condition, right? So I believe, again, it's a kind of hopefully temporarily, and then at a certain time, inflation is will go down. So you come from finances, right? So basically the base rate now is high. Back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, your base cost of money in US dollars probably be 0.5, for our region 3, 4. Now it's closer to double digit, and then we add up all the country risk and etc. etc. So I think it's driven by market, and I'm a strong believer in a market power or market laws. It's like laws of physics or nature, right? They will caught up with you, and then you don't want to be hit hard.
One more question. We touched upon some tokenomics, but I know our president has met with Mr. Tokayev early in April. They visited your center. We're very impressed. And there was also discussion about CBDC, about the digital tenge in the future and the prospect of that. I guess it's also back to National Bank, but I thought since I visited you, maybe you have some opinion about the prospects of that currency. Thank you.
Digital tenge is happening. Definitely, we have a whole arm of the central bank working on this digital tenge. They have issued white papers and etc. So I think that is going to be important project. Recently, during the Astana International Forum, we had a good discussion around it from the market players and then the regulators, whether CBDC is good or not. So the market opinion is CBDC actually takes out a lot of the business from banks, transaction business. So for the big part, you will not, as I was saying, need an infrastructure, banking infrastructure, right? And today's, I think, for a lot of the bank, transactional business is actually more interesting than the balance sheet activity. For still some banks, of course, do the balance sheet business, basically like lending, right? But for a lot of the banks, and especially I think large banks globally, it's more about transaction, and then they can make business. And then with CBDC, central bank is basically taking that market. Another argument, which was something new I've heard and was interesting for me, is actually if CBDC happens, a lot of the banks will not have this cash and that on their balance sheet, and then they have to increase their equity, which is again increases the cost of capital, right? So basically it affects the M0 cash in the economy. So that was an interesting point. But anyway, from another standpoint, I think it's very interesting, but would rather be a good idea, I think, if it's a trans-border CBDC. So if the countries who actively trade can come up with the one central bank's backed digital currency, that would kind of, in my mind, would help to make transactions faster cross-border. Because a lot of us, I mean, at least in Kazakhstan, I mean, internal transactions are already almost instant with Kaspi and etc. So I'm not sure that there is a greater value. I think the value is between the countries, so in cross-border transaction, and hopefully we'll get there. I know IMF is pushing a project on this cross-border CBDC, but I think it's far from actually happening.
I agree. Also on the part that the banks in Kazakhstan are developing in the digital area in their online services, however, unevenly as well. I mean, with the success of Kaspi and the rest, I mean, I think that's the case for most of the banks in the region. Yes, please.
Thank you, Governor, for the presentation. So if I understood correctly, the Constitution was amended to create this center, so it enables businesses to do their job easily and attract more financial investment in the country. Is there a mechanism within the center or in the country somewhere to rectify the laws that are in contradiction to what this Constitution amendment is? Or is there a mechanism in place to continuously improve the overall laws of businesses doing business in the country, so that this center is not always in contradiction with the laws, with the existing laws?
That's a very controversial statement that the center is always in contradiction, because it doesn't. It's a part of a, again, that was the same view from locals, that it's actually maybe separate jurisdiction, so it's a contradictory to Kazakh jurisdiction. No, it's a part of Kazakh jurisdiction. It's a part of Kazakh legislation. The constitution is Kazakh. The constitutional statute is Kazakh. So there are maybe differences in certain business practices that you cannot resolve them from the beginning, right? So as they emerge, we resolve it. But if it's not like hurting anyone. I mean, it stays there, right? You want to have proper, it's a cost benefit basically to changing the legislation, because it's also a cost, human time spent on this. So, and you cannot get everything perfect, right? So things will evolve, things will change. Some of the ideas will be spilled over to a main, as you say, Kazakh regulation, because even the president says, okay, we have AFC court, so maybe local courts should be learning, and we do all that work. Our court does exchange ideas, practices, etc., with the local judicial authorities. So that will have a spill over effect. But again, AFC jurisdiction is part of a whole Kazakh legislation. I'm not sure there are any actually contradictions, but if there is an unclarity that emerges, it will require work on the place.
I see that the question is quite popular for you here today. In terms of
That's
timing, yeah, as always, indeed. In terms of timing, we're quite limited already, so we have probably space for two more at most short questions. Please.
Let me start then. Okay, thanks. We know quite well about the AFC thanks to the dearest fellows. So there is now in Bishkek Green Finance Center that is supported by AFC. So do you foresee that such kind of institutions like yours will be emerging in the region? For example, the governments in Tashkent and there are other towns would also be happy to create similar structures as yours. Do you foresee such development in the region?
For me, it's difficult to tell. I understand that other countries, of course, will have similar ideas and ambitions, I guess. But I believe, again, I might be, you say, biased because I'm the governor of AFC, that we actually are more attractive to the international investment community as a region. So if we can cooperate, and therefore it means like, why would we establish another center around, right? So if we can cooperate and then propose us as the one single market, that would be more attractive. So I cannot foresee it, but that's the idea, I think, which is right. And then every country in the region has its own competitive advantage and can offer its own certain advantage, right? And then we can all use. So I think that cooperation in the region should be more not forced, but championed exactly by people like you who are fellows of the same program, right? So, for example, another idea, if we can create a proper regional energy market, right? Instead of every of us having its own market, thinking about, it's right to think about your energy security, but if we think about energy security as a region, right? And you guys, a lot of you know, we have a different demands for energy during different season in our country. So if we create the proper mechanisms to establish a proper pricing, I think that would be even more attractive. Then all the infrastructure projects, power plants, etc., becomes more attractive, because again, we are talking not just about one country in the region, but as a wider region. Or water sources, again, another asset that we share as a region, right? So instead of, and going back to the AFC, it's a network economy, right? And network economy, whoever comes first and builds the critical mass, it's difficult to catch up with that. For example, like social networks, for anyone, it's difficult to catch up with Facebook now. Regional exchanges were the network economy. So when an exchange is big enough, it's very difficult to establish new and then compete with it. So again, I think instead of trying to build and expense resources to building another one somewhere, I think we would rather be all better off using the same one, because in the end, investment will come to your country. It doesn't go to the center. Center is just an enabler.
I think that's the key point indeed, that is for everyone. Please, one more question.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm from Georgia, and I just want to ask you about the recent developments. Do you see in your in AFC the flow from the Russian companies' registrations, and also the impact of the general, like the increase of the capital flow from Russia?
I wouldn't say there is a big flow. It's definitely a not jurisdiction to circumvent the sanctions. To be precise, there were two companies who have relocated from Russia from the last year. That's a regional office for Central Asia and Caucasus of KPMG. And second one is the regional office of TikTok. So that's pretty much two relocated companies. Unfortunately, we were willing to, and we wanted to capture more transactional businesses, like national businesses like Microsoft's and Google's, JP Morgan's, Goldman's, etc., big banks who have left Russia. But I guess the change or the situation happened so fast, they were fleeing not to new jurisdictions. They didn't have a time to do proper KYC, so they left to the centers where they already exist, like Dubai, London, and etc. So if they have really business interest in the region, I think they will be coming back and then hopefully establish themselves in AFC. But so far, there is, of course, interest from different parts of Russian businesses. We have established a separate group which does review setting up a company. So there is a separate track for a Russian business trying to open its presence in AFC. We already do all the KYC and etc., of course. And we always look to the UBO. We don't stop on a shareholder of a second or third order. We always try to we must get to the final ultimate beneficiary owner. That, of course, creates a longer time. So we have a pipeline or waiting list. And if it's not in SDNs in any way sanctioned, they may be established. And again, I was telling another group yesterday, there is definitely interest. It's a public information that, for example, Polymetal PLC, that's one of the top 5 gold producers in the world that has both business in Russia and Kazakhstan, is working on relocating its headquarters from Jersey to AFC. Their shareholders, it's a public company, 70% free floated in London AEX. The shareholders have voted to go with the project. So yeah, we work closely with them because again, it has a Kazakh substance. And that's one thing we look at that during the onboarding process. Is there a substance? So we don't want any like shell companies and etc. But if there is a Kazakh part of the business, in case of Polymetal, it's I think 40 to 45% of their net income is generated by Kazakh part of the business. There are almost over 3,000 people employed in their mines and facilities in Kazakhstan. So yeah, we pretty much think that Kazakh part of the business is very important for our economy. They pay taxes of over 200 million US dollars. So yeah, we want to make sure that they keep on working. We'll be able to grow, develop what they are probably have lost, can rebuild it in Kazakhstan, meaning invest into the production here, and of course restore shareholder value. As I said, 70% free float. BlackRock is one of the top shareholders with 9.9. They're also looking to restore the shareholder value. So these kind of cases, yes, we want them.
That has been fascinating indeed, very optimistic, and thank you.
Well, thank
Please join me, dear friends, in thanking Governor Bekturov for this very valuable discussion for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaukhar.
I would like to announce that we are going to continue our forum without recess. There will be a reset of the stage. Nonetheless, please stay in the room. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your attention and questions.